Someone asked in the comments of my previous post about Rebecca and if I've had any interaction with her. Just so no one has to go back and read the response, I will explain where things stand here as well. I have not seen or communicated with Becca at all since that fateful morning. I do not know how prominent she now is in Mari's life. I don't know if they have had any contact, but would imagine they have. The kids have not mentioned Rebecca at all. What they tell me is the extent of what I know, which isn't a lot. However, a few weeks after all hell broke loose, I confided in an old friend exactly what was going on. I chose the friend I did because his wife is a notorious gossip. She too is a good friend of mine. So, I didn't feel any guilt for using one of her negative traits for my benefit. To those that don't know, Becca owns her own salon that employs 9 people besides her, when fully staffed. Since word slowly spread through the friend group, 2 stylists left Becca's salon. I cannot know if they left for greener pastures or as a protest for her role in my marriage failing. But I can hope. When things are finalized, I will be airing her dirty laundry freely and often. If that causes some people to not want to work for her or visit her salon, that's great. But I will have to wait to verify if my actions bring her any misery. One thing of note is that I ran into Mari's sister in a grocery store. She hugged me and apologized for her sister's stupidity and immorality. I have no doubt many here would have told me to have no contact with her since she is of the enemy camp. But I have always liked Mandy and her husband Doug. So, I invited them over with their children to enjoy the pool. We cooked out and Doug looked after the kids and the grill while Mandy and I talked. We made every attempt to not let any of the kids overhear our conversation. Thankfully, they were all distracted by the pool and plenty of good food to let us talk at length. To make a long story short, Mari's family knew she cheated on me with more than one man. But Mari blew smoke up their collective asses when it came to any admissions about body counts. Mandy and her parents were told Mari had a couple of short-term affairs after Michael was born until she got caught. When she used the term a couple, I asked how many Mandy considered a couple. She replied 2 or 3. I went and got the folder containing just text exchanges between Mari and guys she'd SX'd for Mandy to view. As she perused through the pages, I explained we were able to verify 47 different guys Mari had engaged in SXUAL activity since Michael was born. I made sure to explain that those 47 were just the tip of the iceberg since we knew she had often arranged ONSs via various phone apps. Mandy didn't know what to say when she heard Mari's verified body count. She wanted to immediately call her parents to inform them and to curse her sister out. Mari's lack of being forthcoming about the number of men she cheated with was enough bad news to wrap her head around. Then I put 2 and 2 together and realized nobody in Mari's family had yet been told I am not Carrie's father. I'm not sure who was more pissed off about that fact, Mandy or me. But Doug had to stop grilling to attend to his wife due to the tears she couldn't hold back. She walked around to my side of the picnic table and gave me a hug as she told me repeatedly she was so sorry. Doug was stunned. He gave me a pat on the back after making sure Mandy was okay and told me we'd go out for drinks later that week. My soon-to-be ex-wife may be a piece of dog SHT. But her family and the people that married into that family seem to be as good as gold. But I will continue being cautious about how much trust one allow. I filled her in on what actually happened that morning and how I came to find out paternity results. She was stunned to say the least. When she told me she wished I'd punched Becca squarely in the nose, I had to ask Mandy's opinion of Becca. Mandy said she never liked Rebecca even as kids. Mandy is 4 years older than Mari, Becca, and me. She was a senior when we were freshmen in high school. Mandy said that more than once she caught Becca stealing makeup from her room but was unapologetic. She said she despised Rebecca because she'd always been manipulative and loved causing drama for others. She even told me she tried to be a big sister role model for Becca, especially after Rebecca's dad divorced her mom. But Mandy said she'd always been an ungrateful little bitch who wouldn't listen to anyone. I asked if she knew Mari actually wanted Becca as her maid of honor initially. She never said yes or no, but the profane stream of consciousness let me know she was unaware. I filled her in on things Mari had told me via letter and in the company of attorneys. She was as shocked over Mari's reasoning as much as anyone. She stated their parents hadn't raised them to be like that. She said her sister had declared she never wanted to be with anyone but me long before high school. I'm not sure if that means Mari was deceiving herself from a young age or feelings changed. I just know humans cannot truly love someone and offer their body freely to others. Either the love was never real or it had died long before I knew it. Mari has made the claim that her heart now and has always belonged to me. I now know that was total bull SHT, and I wonder if she was even capable of love. Not that it matters now, of course. If her heart truly belonged to me, I'd be selling it for transplant to the highest bidder, even though I know it's defective. After lunch the kids kept playing, so I got to talk with Doug and Mandy at length. She filled him in while I went and got ice cream for the kids and served them. When I got back, I could see tears in Doug's eyes, and he gave me a long brotherly hug before I sat back down. He asked about the guy I caught Mari with and how much damage I did. All I could tell him was when I left the guy was unconscious and his lower eyelid on the left side looked like it belonged to a hound dog due to sagging. No police ever contacted me. So, I knew his friend never took him to the cops. But I knew enough to know his orbital bone fracture would require surgery and I never got the bill. Doug said I should have killed the guy. I told him if Mari and Becca hadn't jumped on my back to weigh me down, I probably would have. But I'm glad I didn't. Doug asked if anyone had any idea who Carrie's father actually is. I explained the soon-to-be ex had effed around with far too many guys to know. But I told him the search will go into high gear once all divorce and civil proceedings have been completed. They were both glad to know Mari will get slaughtered in the divorce. They were both glad to know that therapy for all three of us had helped tremendously. When I told them I was anxious for Mari to start working again so she could pay child support and whatever civil fine she ended up owing, they laughed. Doug said if paternity fraud was a crime, Mari would get the death penalty. I told him Mari may as well have committed maternity fraud because any woman that could do what she did was no mother at all. About an hour after they left, my phone started blowing up with calls and texts. The caller ID let me know Mari's mom and dad were both reaching out, as well as calls and texts from numbers with no ID. Then Mandy called and I answered. I could hear her, but there was a lot of screaming and yelling in the background. She stepped outside away from the noise to tell me she'd filled her parents in on all of the truth. Her dad was busy throwing Mari's belongings into her car. Her mom cried and told her what a disappointment she'd become and how ashamed they are to have raised such a harlot. Call me old-fashioned. But when your mother calls you a harlot, it's pretty safe to say you stayed on the train to Horseville 1, 2, or even 47 too many stops. I could hear Mari crying and pleading that she had no place to go. Instead of gloating as she was getting some of what was coming to her, I thought of the kids. I have no issue with Carrie and Michael staying at their grandparents' house. But anywhere else I could think where Mari might go, there was no way in hell I was going to allow them to stay with her. If she went to Rebecca's, there was no damn way I'd allow them to be anywhere around that bimbo beautician. Even if she somehow managed to secure a hotel room with her limited earnings, I didn't trust her not to have some random F-boys stay over. I was happy her family knew some of the truth. But I knew that doing so was going to cause visitation issues. Yet if she didn't find a stable and safe place to stay, I knew the court wouldn't allow any form of unsupervised visitation. Getting to see her kids with supervision for an hour or two every other weekend was going to hurt. But it was a grave she dug for herself with lies and a hellhole vagina. If it meant a homeless shelter or the actual gutter itself, I didn't and still don't care. Mandy and I were still on the phone when I heard Mari come outside and ask if it was me on the phone. Mandy asked what I wanted her to tell Mari. I probably shouldn't have said the truth, because Mari snatched Mandy's phone and began to plead with me. She asked why I was so intent on destroying her life. I simply replied because she destroyed mine. She urged I could have my life back if I'd just forgive her. I told her that life was over and never actually existed due to her lies. Again, she lied and swore she loved me. I told her in a not-so-eloquent way that the only thing she loved in this life was herself and cock. She insisted none of them meant anything to her. I told Mari they all meant more to her than me or her family's security, or she wouldn't have risked it all over and over. She asked why I had ratted her out to her sister and parents. I asked why she hadn't been honest with them about everything, especially about me not being Carrie's father. She cursed at me and said I am her father. I cursed back and told her I'm Carrie's dad and always will be. But she should have at the very least told her family the truth. She said that her parents were disowning her and kicking her out. I told her I'd heard, I was happy to hear, and I was going to do everything in my power to make things worse. She said she loves me and asked how I could be so cruel to someone that loves me. I told her she should have been asking herself that question 6 years ago. I told her I knew she felt regret, simply because she was losing everything and now people are hearing the truth. But I explained what she did makes her worthy of being shunned as well as spoken ill of and toward. What she was experiencing from her family is what she in fact deserves. Hawthorne gave Scarlet Letters a bad name, she'd be a worthy candidate. 3 days later Nadia called and said Mari's attorney called to try and set up another time to meet together. We set that meeting up for last Friday at Nadia's office. Needless to say, I didn't want to see or talk to her. But I knew being essentially homeless would have implications on judicial custody decisions. As soon as we sat down together, her lawyer informed me that Mari had been living in her car since her parents kicked her out. I asked why she hadn't stayed at Rebecca's since the BITCH helped get her into her situation. Mari didn't respond. Mari asked instead if there was any way I'd let her come home or if we could do marriage counseling. I told her she needed to ask her parents if she could come home. The house I and her children lived in was off limits to hussies, hoes, and harlots. She and Becca were to stay far away. As far as MC went, she was free to try it with whomever was stupid enough to marry her next. But I was certain she could never be faithful to anyone after living like a total 604 for so long. Her lawyer objected to my language and the harshness of my words. I told him he was a money-grubbing harlot just for representing such a tramp and asked if she was paying her legal bills via OnlyFans or just blowing him. Nadia put her hand on my shoulder to calm things down and asked if we could all be more civil. I asked to take a break because I'd already loaded my next verbal salvo and I needed to let off some steam. We took a 20-minute break and I went out to my car just to get away from everyone. I thought about writing "Home Sweet Home" with my key on the hood of Mari's car. But I knew I was on camera and I was already dealing with enough lawyers. I could see fast food garbage on the passenger side and piles of clothes in the back seat. Living the nightmare. That's what she'd done to her life and mine. I'm trying with the help of a professional to let go of the hate. But I saw no reason to treat her with one molecule of respect or decency. Everything about her was indecent and harlot don't even respect themselves. At any rate, Nadia urged me to try and keep my answers to the yes or no variety if possible. I agreed to try, but explained there was only so much of my ex's BS lies and excuses I could listen to. She assured me she'd try to get us through the meeting as quickly as possible. When we sat back down, I just glared at Mari and her lawyer to let them know without saying a word they could both go EFF themselves. Nadia started the meeting back up by asking Mari if she'd sought out or received any therapy for herself. She claimed she didn't have the time while dealing with physical therapy, nor did she have the money as her insurance wouldn't cover therapy. Nadia asked if we paid for it if Mari would attend a few therapy sessions by herself. My head turned toward Nadia so fast when she asked that I thought I'd get whiplash. But she kicked me under the table to let me know she had everything under control. Her lawyer immediately said Mari would only see a therapist of her choosing regardless of who paid for it. Nadia indicated that was fine, but that some therapy might help her process her emotions to be a better mother in the future. I still thought Nadia had lost her mind proposing such a thing, but let her keep talking. Her counsel insisted they would talk about it and give us an answer in the future. My lawyer stated that in spite of being opposing counsel, as a woman she wanted to ensure that any women involved in cases she was involved got the help they need. I won't lie. The way she said it was so convincing I seriously thought my own legal representative had turned it on me. Mari asked if we could do counseling as a family unit. That time I kicked Nadia under the table to tell her there was no way in hell I'd agree to that. Nadia kicked me back before telling them if Mari went to several sessions and the therapist thought it would be beneficial, we might. I knew Nadia had a reason to be proposing what she did. Just wish she'd filled me in ahead of time. I knew I'd learn what the goal of her tactics were later, but I was perplexed until the meeting was over. I asked Mari if what she is now going through was worth all the cheap meaningless sex with strangers. I seriously wanted to know if being able to harlot around for years was worth losing it all. I pointed out she had to enjoy what she was doing, or she wouldn't have kept doing it. I really wanted to know if those experiences were worth losing a loving husband and custody of her children. She began to weep what looked like sincere tears before telling me no. I asked if she felt any actual shame. I knew she felt tons of regret, if for nothing else getting caught. But I wanted to know if she felt ashamed for people to eventually know every deviant detail of her tawdry escapades. She claimed she very much did, especially now that her family knew. I asked if she really thought she could hide the truth from her family forever. She said she hoped to keep it all getting out at least until she started back to work and got a place of her own. But she knew it would come out eventually. She apologized for hurting me and claimed she never ever wanted to do that. I told her she didn't hurt me, she effing destroyed me. I told her every single day, all day long I felt pain. It's in my soul, but I can feel it in my joints, my muscles. But Advil brings no relief. My heart is so broken that when she poisoned my soul it seeped into my appendages. On a good day I feel numb. On a bad day, the tension fills my body. Depression causes physical aching sometimes, and some days I wake up feeling sore for no reason. She cried hearing me express the pain her actions were making me endure. I told her to tell me what I ever did to justify her betraying me so thoroughly and cruelly. She just cried harder. I asked her what she thought she deserved from me and life after the things she'd done. Not what she wanted, what she thought should happen to someone who literally effed her life away. She began to bawl. I was sick of the tears and lack of answers. I was done. The meeting ended with Mari's lawyer trying to get her out of the office as she repeatedly asked me to forgive her. I kept telling her to go home and drive her home somewhere else, because we were done talking. When they finally got off of the premises, I made Nadia explain why she proposed I pay for Mari to see a shrink. She explained that doing so would be seen as a favorable act by the court. But Mari was clearly unstable and not coping with life very well. If a professional recommended or insisted she need to be hospitalized for her own good, well, ce est la vie. In a distraught state, it is very easy to get yourself institutionalized at least overnight. Allowing her to see a professional might get her some help, but it also might help us when they see how frazzled she's become. She deceived me for more than 6 years, just about my entire life. I feel no guilt in not revealing my true intentions of why I actually want her to see a shrink. If she thinks family therapy is a possibility to get her to go, so be it. Mari is good at digging her own grave. I hope that continues. Yes, I realize this was by no means a short update, but it was as condensed as I could make it. The kids are both doing well. Michael is playing baseball as a pitcher since he's the tallest on his team. He does well from the mound and plate even with the largest strike zone. I'm taking him along with Doug and his 2 sons to see the Sox play the Tigers next week. Miss Carrie is as beautiful and sweet as ever. She loves the pool, and it's been great having friends over with their kids to enjoy it. I want to raise 2 kids that are too busy with life to have their nose pressed against a phone. That may warp them to the point they feel out of place in society. But they'll be my warped kids. Thanks to all for the kind words and support. Every day seems like it brings a new challenge. But knowing I have so many who have my back means more than words can express peace, and thanks to all edit, a few people got the idea. Mandy and her parents knew Mari had cheated on me before I knew. I told her parents about catching her cheating the same morning I told my parents. They knew nothing of her activities before I told them. I did not find out until later Mari had cheated with multiple men, one of which is Carrie's father. I was the one to inform Mari that I am not Carrie's biological father. I just assumed she'd told her family. When her dad referred to those men, I assumed he knew she'd been with enough guys to give her vagina its own Yelp rating. I love her family. I don't want them to hurt any more over this than they have to. I had and had no desire to put salt in their wounds. Mari admitted to a couple short-term affairs to them, that's it. I was trying to protect Carrie and assumed she'd discreetly tell her family. I cut off contact with them and had been communicating via Jessica and Nadia. Until I ran into Mandy, I hadn't had a sit-down talk with anyone in her family. We came to find out Mari was hoping it stayed that way. Sorry for the confusion. A few weeks ago, I signed into this throwaway account for the first time in almost a year. There were many messages and comments inquiring about how the kids and I are doing or how things turned out. A very large part of me wanted to ignore them all, sign out, and never log in again. Because I have managed to get back on course with my life and my children's life, and dwelling on the past only hinders forward progress. But the advice I got from Reddit was supportive and helpful from the start, all the way through several episodes in my life when I was at my lowest points. For those people that assisted me so well and showed me such kindness, I will make this final update. Because I do owe a huge thank you to the many who helped me navigate the minefield I didn't yet know where I was living in. It's been so long since my last update, most readers will have completely forgotten my posts, which is totally understandable. Previous links and a TLDR will be posted at the bottom. This will be a long read, and for that I do apologize. But much time has passed, and many events have occurred, to the point where this can't be explained in 2 or 3 paragraphs. Because things have now been finalized beyond what I ever imagined or intended. When I last posted, my soon-to-be ex-wife Mari had been kicked out of her parents' house for neglecting to tell them I am not the biological father of our daughter Carrie. I had informed them I'd caught their daughter cheating the same morning I told them about our wreck. However, she had not revealed to them that the guy I caught her with was just one in a long line of men with whom she cheated. Mari had been forced to live in her car because she had nowhere else to go after being disowned. Meanwhile, I was in the process of attempting to legally adopt Carrie after having the court adjudicate I am not her biological father. And my attorney Nadia was attempting to get Mari to see a mental health professional of her choosing, in the hopes it might benefit me. Nadia recommended 2 local psychiatric practices to Mari's lawyers, saying we'd pay for her sessions, or she could choose any other therapist she wished to see. I had some major misgivings about having to pay for the sessions or doing anything that might actually benefit Mari. If you learn nothing else from my experience, take this advice to heart: love them or hate them, always listen to your lawyer. To make a long story short, Mari chose a local psychiatrist who instantly recognized she was mentally unstable. For her own well-being, she committed Mari to the local hospital's psyche ward overnight for observation. That overnight stay became many months under psychiatric care in hospitals. Due to confidentiality rules within the medical field, I never heard her actual diagnosis. But her attorney said each time he saw Mari she was heavily sedated and out of it. Those initial months she spent trying on designer straitjackets delayed the finalization of the divorce and child custody hearings. However, since Mari was not contesting and her counsel could stand in as her representation, there was no delay in my attempt to adopt Carrie. As sad as everything had recently been for me in my life, hearing that judge question Carrie and listening to her responses made me so unbelievably happy. Carrie didn't know she had ever been declared not my daughter by the court at my behest. So, it seemed funny to her for the judge to ask if she wanted me to be her daddy. I was so proud of her, though she couldn't understand why. She was just happy when I told her I loved her as she hugged me as her adopted father for the first time. I was glad Michael was also there, but even more grateful Mari wasn't. Neither Michael nor Carrie really had any understanding of what the hearing was about. But Carrie is now legally my daughter, even if we share no DNA. When I saw Mari cheating, it instantly removed all love I ever had for her. Until I was able to reunite with Carrie, I was so effing afraid that because of what her mother did, I would lose all love for her as well, or resent her. To still feel that love I always had for her again was such a relief. I would not have been in the wrong if I couldn't get past that, no matter what anyone wants to say. If paternity matters enough to the legal system to force a man to pay for a child that is his, it also matters enough for a man to not be able to accept a child that isn't. But damn it, I really needed Carrie in my life. I'd lost too much already, and she needed a dad who had already loved her for her entire lifetime. If I'm honest, there will always be a tiny part of my soul that will remain broken because she is not my biological daughter. I cannot put into words how devastating that was to find out and accept. I know I am doing the very best I can as a parent in this situation. I believe time given to children and love is far more important than anything any parent could buy them. So will always be my focus. Other than Mari's mental issues, there was truly no reason for the divorce not to be finalized. She wasn't getting a penny from me, and even her own lawyer admitted that in her situation, she had no hope of getting any custody at that time. If and when she got out of her padded cell paradise, if she found a safe place to live, she could petition the court to gain some type of visitation and/or custody. The court appointed a legal aide to vouch for Mari being cognizant of what she was doing. Her lawyer got her to sign the divorce papers with witnesses and had them notarized. I had to show up in court with Nadia a week later for attorneys to get the judge to finalize some issues. 2 weeks later, I was legally divorced from the biggest mistake and waste of my life. I should have been happy about that, and I was. Signing the papers was the symbolic nail in the coffin to our marriage. Yet it all felt anticlimactic somehow. It amazed me how well Mari's family stuck to their guns in regard to disowning her after they found out everything she'd done. I'm sure some of that was due to wanting to stay on my good side, so they could visit with the kids. Even though her parents and sister knew she was in the psyche ward, they never even attempted a visit, nor did I obviously. But it was apparent from the times I talked to her parents how disgusted they were by their daughter's depravity. They were embarrassed for people to know what a tramp their daughter had been. I could empathize and sympathize. Knowing Mari had been run through more times than an oscillating lawn sprinkler in July made me ashamed to admit I had ever been intimate with her. Mandy made sure to let everyone know what her sister and Rebecca had been doing, short of paternity fraud, of course. Between social media and face-to-face conversations with friends, word got out about their exploits. Within a month, nearly everybody knew about her years of cheating and sexual immorality, and they all made plans to give her hell if they ever encountered her again. It was slightly humiliating for me having everyone know how foolishly trusting I had been. At the end of the day, in a relationship, you either trust or you don't, and she'd never given me a single reason not to trust. It wasn't until a few months before I caught her that I even considered she could ever cheat. In hindsight, a few red flags were missing, but she covered her tracks well. I should have put an end to the girls' nights out obviously once her depression subsided, just out of principle. But that night she stayed out all night was the first and only time that had ever happened before. She'd call if she was going to be 15 minutes late, which was extremely rare. I was actually worried, because that was so unlike her, and I wanted to make sure she was safe. I know many people probably think I'm an idiot or blind for not knowing for so long. By keeping things strictly sexual and limiting the number of encounters with each man, she never developed any trails to follow. She wasn't glued to her phone or protective of it. I never felt the desire to snoop. She portrayed herself to be the beautiful, loving wife and mother. I wasn't the only one who was deceived. Many friends have told me face to face they were shocked to know she was cheating, and would have told me if they'd known. They had no idea any more than I did. If Mari had worn a dress with no panties on a windy day, and everyone within 40 feet of her could hear the ocean, that would have been obvious to me and everyone else. But everything she represented herself to be, to everyone, was a total lie. They wanted nothing to do with her, and nobody cared if she was kept in the ward the rest of her life. The only problem with no one having any contact with Mari was that it left us blindsided. Nobody alerted us when they decided to let her out. Laws prevented the hospital from letting us know due to doctor-patient confidentiality. I have no idea if she just convinced the doctors she was okay, or if they just felt like they had done all they could do to help her. But they released her on a Tuesday just before noon. She somehow made her way from the hospital to her car, which was parked at her lawyer's office behind his home. From there she took her car and drove to the kids' school. When she was informed that she couldn't see or check the kids out of school, she made enough of a scene that the school called me. I told them to call the police and that I would be there as fast as I could. On the way to my car, I called Mandy to let her know her baby sister was no longer using her Airbnb accommodations on Insanity Island. I told her I had no idea if she'd been released or escaped, but I'd find out when I got to the school. She said she'd call her parents, my parents, and Doug to let them know what was going on and to keep them posted. By the time I got there, 2 cop cars and an ambulance were parked out front with lights flashing. I pulled into a parking spot, got out and headed toward the closest officer. After identifying myself as the ex-husband, he directed me through a side door which ended up being the school cafeteria. I was relieved to learn no one had alerted Michael or Carrie to the drama in the front office and school had not recessed. The police had Mari seated at a cafeteria table and she tried to stand when she saw me, demanding to see her children. They kept her from approaching me and I asked if they had checked with the hospital mental health ward to see if they had released her. The police informed me that while the hospital couldn't release certain information without a warrant, they had released her under her own cognition. Mari started crying and demanded to see her children. I told the cop I had full custody and there was no way in hell they were seeing her in such a frantic emotional state. She yelled at me that she wanted to see her children yet again. I told her to go have her lawyer file paperwork for visitation. But unless I saw an evaluation from some mental health professional telling me otherwise, she was an unfit parent and a manic mother. She said the kids are the only 2 people alive that still have any love left for her. I told her that was probably true, but they're just kids, and they don't know any better. The cop laughed, then managed to regain his composure. She tried to come at me, he held her back. She said she hadn't seen her children in months and that they were the only thing that got her through her time in lobotomy land. I explained I really didn't care about her struggle to cope with the consequences of her own actions. But there was no way in hell I was subjecting our children to her lies and drama that day. I told the cop I wanted to file a restraining order on her to stay the hell away from me and the kids. He agreed to file the initial paperwork on my behest, but that a judge would have to determine if one was needed and sign it. He then explained to Mari since I was not going to allow her to see the kids, they had already talked to the principal of the school. She needed to leave immediately and not come back onto the premises until she could show a court order granting her partial custody. To my surprise, she didn't make an even bigger scene. I guess she realized nothing she could do at that moment would get her what she wanted. She grabbed her purse and keys before being escorted by an officer to her car. She got in and drove away while the other cop and I filled out the RO form on his tablet and talked with the principal. Soon enough the kids got out of school, and I loaded up Michael and Carrie to take home. I was about 2 miles from the school when I thought I saw Mari's car pull out from a fast food restaurant just after we passed by. I took the next right, and the next right, and the next right, until I was on the same street we'd been on. I could see Mari's car up ahead and sped up to try and figure out what she was doing. She was oblivious to the fact I'd managed to maneuver my way behind her. It was obvious she was looking for someone, and that very person was observing her. The kids didn't even recognize her car ahead of them. Thankfully, a Reddit user had urged me to get front and rear cameras with audio recorders installed in my vehicles. That gave me all the evidence I needed to prove Mari was stalking me and the kids even after being warned by the cops to stay away. I went straight to the police station and showed the magistrate footage of Mari waiting for us to pass by, pulling out and then losing us. She assured me the evidence would be submitted to the case judge, and I should hear I've been granted the restraining order sooner than later. In 2 days while I was at work, I got a call from the police saying the restraining order had been filed and served that morning. They told me she was to stay 200 yards away from me and the children at all times. She was forbidden from contacting me or the kids in any possible way except via her attorney to my attorney. I was directed to immediately call the police to see if she did anything to break the RO. I felt some relief that at least I had the law on my side. But I fully expected her to ignore the restraining order by trying to contact me or the kids. To my surprise, nobody heard anything from Mari. Her sister said she had not tried to contact her or her parents. I fully expected her to seek out some type of free legal assistance to file for partial custody, but no one ever contacted not